Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Chucky Season 2, Episode 6. So, we of course have to do a little bit of rebuttal from last week's episode because, of course, in last week's episode, we have Sister Ruth, who had gone on to dump Macho Chucky into the garbage. And so we had a moment, of course, where Macho Chucky is to drag his way out of this garbage and immediately is to show up right in front of Sister Ruth. And we now just have Sister Ruth immediately assuming that this doll is to now have the spirit of Jesus Christ within it. And so now Sister Ruth is going on and metaphorically licking the boots of Chucky to just kind of praise the fact that this doll is to now come alive. So, now that I've gone on and stated that, let me go on and talk about this episode. So, I liked this episode. I thought the episode was fun, but here is also the thing. I'm really just starting to get restless with this show. Maybe not Young and the Restless, but still restless nonetheless. So, we really just have me think it's like, okay, like, what was the point of adding all of these Chuckies in? Like, thinking that we were going to get this huge battle, or we were going to finally get a number of Chuckies go on and all kill off a number of people in this show. Plus, there was obvious characters that they could have actually killed off in this episode, and they couldn't have been bothered to, because heaven forbid the cast is so thin in this show that we have to go on and have, like, Trevor's friend, twice removed person now, like, complaining to Lexi and Jake and whoever that Trevor is now gone, as if we now have to care about that character. And this girl's name, who I believe is Jerry? Jerry? Geri. How do I pronounce that? I'm not quite sure. But this character just comes in, is like, well, hey, like, Trevor, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, what was the point of that? What was the point of that? That was a waste. So we have Jerry that goes on to complain to Lexi about how Trevor is gone, and obviously Lexi has something to do with it, but they do nothing with that. As well as they do a lot of just milking out and nothing with a lot of things. Because that's what they do in a show. So, with that said, I am starting to get restless because when it seems that we go on and have a death in this show, I immediately have to ask in my brain, is that person definitively really dead? Because I don't think so. I don't think so whatsoever. I think that the person is probably still alive because they are not to have their heads chopped off. They are to not have them be blown up. They are not to, of course, be, like, chopped up in itty little bitty pieces and fed to the colonel. Because that way we can go on and definitively say they've been dead. We've also have had, over time in this season, devalue prior deaths that has just gone on to state to us that Chucky really hasn't killed much of anybody now, has he really, in 2.5 seasons. Tiffany has probably gone on and killed more people, or had people been killed around her in one episode than we've had Chucky kill anybody this whole season. And so I'm like, wow, like, that kind of really tells you, like, how just we've gone on to just milk this show for all it's worth. Like, we also just have such a thin cast. It obviously is painfully to showcase that through every episode now. How we just kind of have to get, like, people from the woodwork that were somehow tied into anything to just kind of have them get more screen time. And I'm just like, wow. Like, so Let's go on and let's talk about this episode. So, Father Bryce, of course, is finally putting the hammer down and is to finally go and do a lockdown of this school because he's just like, well, like, it seems that people are going on and breaking rules and laws, so I think it's finally time for us to just lock down this school. And if people just start dying, then you know what? You would just think finally that Father Bryce would just immediately accuse Jake, Devin, and Lexi of killing people because no deaths were happening before they got here. So you would think Father Bryce would desperately be stating that Jake, Devin, and Lexi need to transfer to somewhere elsewhere because they must be the problem. And no matter how Father Bryce does go on and state like, well, hey, like I think that these kids should get transferred. I think they should go elsewhere. Uh, like again, we just have other people that are telling Father Bryce, no, 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 no. I think they're good here. And he's like, no, like they need to go. Like people are dying while they're here. Like get rid of them now. So because he can't put his finger on it, but like deaths are happening and they haven't been since they got here. So, anyways, so we have a movie reference of just the movie Sister Act in this episode. So I'm like, okay, like I guess they've run out of movie puns. Like, what are we gonna go on and just get to like movie quotes now? Are they gonna state like we're gonna need a bigger boat in some other episode, even though it won't make sense? So we have in this episode, we are to find out that the Colonel seems to be a cannibalistic Chucky doll. And I'm like, okay, that does make sense for why all the other Chucky dolls like are very much like torn apart and like you just kind of see certain headpieces or you just see whatever because the Colonel has just been going on and been very dissatisfied with certain dolls, so he just eats them. So like you can understand why further and further along now all the Chucky dolls are kind of against one another in this episode. But then again, you have to like realize that there isn't going to be like a huge massive payout to either one of the Chucky dolls fighting one another or either kind of having their own agendas. So we have this kind of funny moment in this episode where everybody, it seems, now has their own Chucky doll. That we have like Dr. Mixter that has her own bald Chucky. We have Sister Ruth that has her own macho Chucky. And then we also have the kids that are in their room with supposedly uh, good Chucky. Because I was right all along. So we have Father Bryce, and the funny thing about this episode is he's going on like, well, hey, did you get that doll from Dr. Mixter? Like, where did you get that doll from? Why is it that it doesn't have hair? Why all of a sudden does this one have hair? What's going on? What's going on with all these dolls? Like, that was a pretty funny part about this episode. Just kind of confusing Father Bryce and just be like, Father Bryce is gonna, like, just finally just have this, like, this alcohol like on reserve and he's just gonna be pounding it because he's like, oh my god, like to finally have Father Bryce just like fall so far that he's gonna need alcohol because he's like, man, like I have had some issues, I've had some problems. We can even work it into the story to where Father Bryce at one point was a alcoholic, and maybe we finally find out that Father Bryce is like holding on to some hooch for like a special occasion, or he is to go on and have this hooch to just be like, no, like this was to always be my one weakness, but now like Father Bryce is just pounding in the alcohol. Anyways, so let's go on. And so we come to find out to have the Colonel be eating away at Andy, literally. Uh, and so, come to find out, we find the Colonel is basically just Hannibal Lecter Chucky. That's really what he is, in all honesty. He just feels that he's much smarter than the other Chuckies or superior to them, just because he outsmarts them. So this is like Hannibal Lecter Chucky. And why isn't that he's just kind of wearing like the Hannibal Lecter like mask would just put icing on top of the cake? Because that's really what this doll really is. So we have this lockdown, and so we have Nadine and we have Lexi that is trying to sneak into Jake and Devin's room because they want to go on and they want to get together, realizing that these Chuckies are coming for them. And so Jake makes the clear consensus that they should be prepared this time around. They should be like having all this gear to try and finally combat the Chucky dolls, realizing it's only a matter of time before they're coming. And so Andy, it seems, is to also get his strategy for when he is to go on and at some point be uh, like defending himself, or to try and go on and also help Jake and a number of the people that he is to have met. So supposedly Andy has gone on to, for a whole entire year, just been wasting away, literally, in a cabin. So we're going to see what Andy is to come back and bring to the table, if not to probably just have him go on missing again for a number of episodes. So we are to go on in this show and continue the Nika, Kyle, and Glenda story. And so really that all is to just have Kyle try and much understand Nika and the Chucky like way of things. And so with that said, also Nika is playing around with Glenda, and Glenda is going on and sending photos to Glenn, having Glenda now stating or recapping like what she's going through, which is still having that dream, and Glenn is going on and giving Glenda, the photos of the gift that she was given, or that Glenn was given by Tiffany. Just a little bit of a recap there. So, anyways, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers so we can kind of get this all out there. So it's about that time yet again to, of course, double fire this bad boy up, because it's about that time. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this episode. So, in the very beginning of this episode, we are to go on and have, of course, Lexi and Devin going to find Andy being leg chopped up by the Colonel, and Dr. Mixter is being there. So Dr. Mixter is talking to Chucky, and so really all that matters with this dialogue is like Dr. Mixter is like, okay, like we should go on and kill those kids and so on and so forth, yada yada yada. That seems to be her main goal in life, is to just state like, well, hey, like you're gonna die soon, just so you know, just so you're aware. Yeah, I'm sure if they've survived 2.5 seasons of Chucky, like I don't think they're dying anytime soon. So we have Lexi and we have Devin, and so what happens is Dr. Lexi takes the Colonel and leaves, and so both Lexi and Devin grab Andy And Andy is very baffled and confused, and he doesn't know who these people are because he's just been tortured and manipulated and brainwashed and all kinds of stuff. Maybe at one point Andy does have like Chucky inside of him, because when really looking at it, wouldn't that be just an interesting twist to just be like, oh yeah, like when really looking at it, all of these times, like the reasoning that everyone is to be just kind of on the side of Chucky is because there's a slightly tweakingly different version of Chucky in everyone. So that would be interesting. So, because they can really play that off. So we have Devin and Lexi getting Andy and bringing them back to the church, to the school. So we now have Father Bryce that is going on to state that he has realized that a number of students have broken a lot of rules and a lot of laws and so on and so forth. So he's mentioning like how like the outside world, like they have their rules, they have their laws, and like we have our rules here. So Father Bryce is now stating that since some of the students are to go on and break these rules and whatever, that he is going to go on and issue a lockdown. So that's effective immediately. So everybody's going off, and so Nadine is talking to Jake about the situation they're in. So we then have Father Bryce and we have Sister Catherine, and they're talking. We also had Jerry, who was talking to Lexi about Trevor, how like, hey, Trevor is gone and I think you have something to do with it. Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna matter a whole hill of beans, right? You were the last one to see him, so like obviously like you're gonna go on and you're gonna be the one that was to be the guy who killed him or made him disappear. So, but anyways, Father Bryce is talking to Sister Catherine. Let's get back to this dialogue. So we have Sister Catherine that is mentioning how Father Bryce is twisting and turning the Bible and its narrative to fit Father Bryce's needs. And I'm like, yeah, that technically does work, because when you think about it, like anytime someone is to go on and quote the Bible, there always is a bizarrish way to like counter the Bible with some other saying. So it almost kind of makes the Bible at some point to just be like, well, like there's always like one way to say things, but then there's also a counter to that same way. So it's just like, okay, like how effective is to like have somebody go on and be quoting the Bible, and somebody can just go on and just be like, well, but John 13, 6, like this and that. So anyways, so Father Bryce is going on to talk to Sister Catherine, and then all of a sudden we have Father Bryce and Sister Catherine see that both Lexi and Devin had brought Andy back into the church. So, or brought him into the church. So Father Bryce is not wanting to take care of Andy, but Sister Catherine is saying like, well, hey, like the Bible states that we should, so let's go on and let's take care of Andy. So we see Sister Catherine going on and like nursing Andy's wounds. Andy is to have desperately asked for like a shower and is to ask for like a thing of food. So, because of course the Colonel was to say to Andy, it's like, well, Andy, if you are getting hungry, it's like, just go ahead and eat some more of your leg because it's delicious. Just eat your own leg, Andy, because it's delicious. So, just very Hannibal Lecter. So, like he's gonna have it with some fava beans and ice candy. So, Catherine takes care of Andy. Andy goes on and takes the scissors from by the equipment, realizing that at some point he's going to go on and probably find a Chucky in his midst, and so he might as well just stab into one of them, right? So let's go on and just cover all of the Kyle and Nika stuff and Glenda, just to get that all out of the way. So we have Glenda, who's to go on and sleep and have that horrible dream again that we've seen in prior episodes, so I'm not going to go into it again. It's just recapping. So Glenda ends up waking up to text Glenn that, like, hey, I had that dream again, and, like, did you have it? And Glenn's like, yeah, so did I. So Glenn ends up going on and giving Glenda the picture of the doll and states that Tiffany had given this to Glenn as a gift. And so we have Kyle that is talking to Nika, and so Nika is mentioning like how much that she has lost because of Chucky, and Kyle ends up taking off her glasses, and she has this kind of ear that's attached to these glasses, and Kyle is like, well, yeah, like, you're not the only one that's kind of lost things because of Chucky. So Kyle goes on to talk to Nika about, like, well, how is it that you guys, like, how is it that, like, Nika and Chucky, like, how are you talking to one another? And Nika's like, well, I don't know, like, it just, like, happens. So Kyle goes on and states, is like, well, like, we're gonna have to talk to Chucky. We're gonna have to get a conversation with him. So Kyle is to ask Nika if she's ready, and Nika's like, well, like, no, but do it anyways. So Kyle cuts her hand. Nika sees the blood. Nika turns into Chucky. And so now Chucky goes on, and it's realized that Kyle is still alive. So it's like, oh my god. So Chucky is a state that no one died in that explosion from prior episodes. Because nobody dies in the show. No one does. Does somebody die at the end of this episode? Because they probably won't. Because we'll find out that they're still alive. Or they're only knocked out. Or they lost a little bit of blood. Or whatever. Like, it'll always be that. So that's the thing that's getting a little young the restless, if you know what I mean. So we have we have Chucky that goes on and is talking to Glenda and is telling Glenda to kill Kyle. Glenda ends up picking up this gun and is going to load it at Kyle, and Kyle just stands there, does nothing. Does nothing. You would have thought that Kyle would have just been like, okay, like, since this girl is just standing there doing nothing, like, I'll just knock the gun away from her, or I'll get up and try to run away, or whatever. No, Kyle just sits there just assuming that Glenda is not going to fire this gun. I would not be that trusting with my life, but that's just me. So Glenda drops the gun and is to tell Kyle to, like, get rid of Chucky. So we have Kyle that slaps Nika, and Nika's like, oh my god, that was so hard. Like, did it have to be that hard? So we turn around and have Nika, Kyle, and Glenda all end up going on this road trip together. And the goofy thing is, like, we have Nika, who is now back being Chucky again. And so I'm like, wait a minute, when was there a time when Nika is to now be Chucky? I'm so confused. So we go and have them drive off, and so I'm like, okay, I'm hoping that there's like a really good payout with what they're doing. And I'm assuming at one point we're probably going to have like all the young kids and like Kyle and Nika and whoever, like they're all just going to live together in happy bliss as they're going to go on and fight off all these Chucky dolls, because that's where I'm assuming that the story is heading. So we go back to the kiddies in the school. So they're on lockdown, and so we have Nadine and we have Lexi that make their way into like climbing into Devin and Jake's room. And so we have Nadine, who has a bunch of stuff that she can hand all these guys to defend themselves against against Chucky, because Jake is stating that they need to be on the offensive instead of the defensive, to just kind of be prepared for Chucky to be coming, because there's so many of them now. Because we have, of course, the Dr. Mixter with the Colonel walking into the school, and we have the good Chucky that is like kind of waving at the Colonel, and we also have Macho Chucky, who is getting like pampered and getting his feet cleaned by Sister Ruth, as we of course have Sister Ruth, who is to kind of change her hair to satisfy Chucky, and Chucky's like, well, I think you'd be better off as a blonde. And Chucky goes on and like kisses his muscles, and so he has, of course, Sister Ruth asking Chucky, it's like, well, hey, why did you kill that priest from before? And Chucky mentions that he needed a workout. So everything about this is like he should be just be banging and clanging and all kinds of goofy crap. Uh, but like sadly enough, this Macho Chucky will have such a long life with this episode. So we have the Colonel that is to mention that he's gonna kind of thin the herd of Chuckies here, and that's his next goal. As already Macho Chucky is giving the Colonel the finger. So we have Dr. Mixter that comes into the school with this bald Chucky, and we have Father Bryce that asks Dr. Mixter, it's like, well, wait a minute, like, why do you have, like, this doll? And let me pause here for a second. Alright, so Dr. Mixter has the doll, and so Father Bryce is going on and asking, like, well, hey, why do you have this doll, and why is it bald now? And Dr. Mixter says, oh, this is the doll that I have for therapy sessions, to kind of help the certain patients. And Father Bryce is like, well, really? Like, does it work on everyone? And so Dr. Mixter is to say, like, well, yeah, all the ones, but besides the ones that really have, like, real evil within them. So Father Bryce is just very confused about, like, this bald doll. Then all of a sudden he goes back to his office, and we have Sister Ruth that grabs Macho Chucky and is stating to Father Bryce, it's like, oh my god, like, we have this doll that is to have the spirit of Jesus within it, and Father Bryce ends up telling Sister Ruth, it's like, I thought I told you to get rid of that doll. I thought I told you to throw it away. Like, what are you doing with this doll? And so, like, Sister Ruth is like, wait a minute, you don't understand. But so this doll is not going on and talking right in front of Father Bryce. And so we really just go on here and have Father Bryce not believing anything that they're stating here. So we go on to have the Colonel and Macho Chucky square off. So Macho Chucky had gone on to eat all of these kind of like wafer like things, the things that they would kind of give everybody to kind of like as a food thing to go on, and it's some kind of church thing. I don't remember what it was all about. So uh we have Chucky that was just pounding all these cracker things, and so come to find out, we still have Chucky, who is Macho Chucky, who's just kind of eating one of them, and we have the Colonel that goes on and states that it's like, well, hey, like, uh, if anything, like, between the two of them, they are going to fight, but Macho Chucky is going to immediately lose because, of course, the Colonel is just smarter, and Macho Chucky's like, I don't know about that. So, come to find out, we have the Colonel that goes on and is to have figured out a way to poison Chucky with all the little wafer white things. And we then have Chucky who's like, wah, 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 and he falls down. The Macho Chucky ends up dying, supposedly, but I highly doubt that he's really dead, because I'm sure they're going to bring him back somehow. So, after that death, we then have the Colonel that makes his way to try to get to Jake, Devin, Lexi, all the people that are in that room. So the Colonel goes on to go after them, and he ends up going and saying some weird, goofy things, and he falls over because he has the scissors to the head. Andy was to go on and find the Colonel and stab him into the head for revenge for him getting tortured by the Colonel for such a long time. So then Andy is to go into the room and realize that there is a good Chucky in this room, and he's like, hey, like, you can't go on and trust any of these dolls. There is no good Chucky. And we are all starting to realize that I was possibly right all along. Because, of course, we have Dr. Mixter that ends up going on and taking the good Chucky doll, and as they're walking out of it, we are walking out of this room, we all of a sudden have the good Chucky doll that is talking to Dr. Mixter, and Father Bryce and Sister Catherine are right there. And so Dr. Mixter is just stating that she's a really good ventriloquist, and Father Bryce is like, wow, like, that's really, like, something really talented there. Like, you really have, like, you're really putting on a show here. And so we all of a sudden accidentally have a gun being drawn. Sister Catherine ends up getting shot in the arm, and she falls over. And Father Bryce is kind of looking after her, and so, let me correct myself. There ends up having, like, I think Dr. Mixter has a gun, and so the gun ends up getting free. Sister Catherine ends up getting shot, and to be more vague, so I can get off of one tiny bit of a mistake. So, here's my thought. One, why wasn't Sister Ruth killed? Because Chucky had a plethora of times, Macho Chucky had a plethora of different times where Chucky could have gone on and killed this woman, and he didn't. There were so many times where they were either alone, or Macho Chucky could have gone on, and at any point in time when it seemed that Sister Ruth was revealing to Father Bryce that, like, well, hey, this Chucky is to be real, we then should have had Macho Chucky right then and there, after that, kill off this girl and finish that. We also could have had at any point Dr. Mixture being killed. We could have had her being killed by anybody at any time. It would have made the most sense. Instead of having Jake, Devin, and Lexi just being worried at any second that Dr. Mixture is going to come in and need them all to go to some therapy session, and instead we could have had any number of these people, even Andy, go on and find Dr. Mixture, stab into her, and boom, she's dead also. So we have Nadine that is chasing after Good Chucky, and both Good Chucky and Nadine make their way to this kind of like this high like clock tower almost like thing where there seems to be this opening. So come to find out, while Nadine is talking to Chucky, and Chucky had gone on while talking to, or Good Chucky had went on while talking to Jake and Devin. Good Chucky had taken this pen and stabbed it into this bug, and Devin realized that Chucky did not puke afterwards, and so this Good Chucky seems to be going on and seemingly being either putting on an act, or is to like have like this back and forth of him being good, him being bad. So what is the definitive answer here? Because we go on to have bad Chucky that grabs Nadine, chucks her out of this opening, and Nadine falls to her death. I say death because we're not really sure if Nadine is dead. Are we? They have to go on and specifically tell us that she is dead. They have to confirm that she is dead. And if she wakes back up, stab her in the heart or chop off her head or something. So we can definitively state that she's dead. Even though I did like Nadine, don't get me wrong, but I am not really having anything that feels at this point that anybody who dies is really dead. So I like Nadine. Like, I've seen her in Mighty Ducks Game Changers, and who knows, maybe that's the reason why Nadine was to not go on and be like kind of a very like long character in the show, because she has other things to do and other shows and whatever to be a part of, yada yada yada. But so with that said, yeah, I'm gonna go on and just get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there is a ton of stuff for this episode, because there's a lot going on. You can go on and correct me at any point if I made any mistakes, because I'm sure that there probably is. So with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Let me know how you felt about this episode, whether you're just like, no, I was really won over by this episode. I don't know what he's talking about. Because I get it. There's sometimes where I'm just kind of like, it feels that I always want to be negative about everything. But really, it's just like, well, like, I can go on and just say, like, thumbs up episode, but I have problems with it. I'm not going to just, like, just suck the D of every freaking show and movie that I see. Like, there is going to be something that I'm going to have to just have a problem with. Just like, well, yeah, it doesn't have real watchability or something like that. There's always going to be that. So that said, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. The wafers. The wafers were sacramental bread. Please, don't go on and correct me. I was pretty much right anyways with the wafers. So yeah, so with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that I missed. So with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.